a giant Superman statue, nor did I know there was a Metropolis, Illinois.
It comes as a shock to a few people. We first learned about it in 1996, didn't come to the celebration until 2008, so I'm a little slow, but it's okay. So this is going to be nice and informal, I think. I think I have like one real question. When Lois walks in, burdened with glorious purpose, and hands in a resignation letter that says, "I quit." Have you in your life had that awesome moment where you finally just to say, "I'm out of here"? You ever had a job like that?
No, but I have had that experience with men.
Oh! If I had a tie, I'd go like this.
I can't remember if that was episode 1 or episode 2, season 1, but that was a really fun scene to shoot, and that was with Lee Toland Krieger, who's a phenomenal director. And I just loved the elevator doors opening. She's got that green coat on that she always wears, and it's kind of flying behind her. It felt like a little bit of a cape. But no, I don't think I've ever quit a job. Yeah, they just kind of have ended. You know, as an actor, they end. They don't go on forever, unfortunately.
Never quit a job. So at the end of the year, you get like 200 W-2s because you just never turned in your notice, things like that. Well, then let's go back to those jobs. Was acting the one and only for you?
No, I started acting in my mid-20s. I was kind of into more academia, and I went to Harvard. And I was studying...
Ever heard of it?
Basically art and literature, and that was going to be the plan. And then I took a year off after I graduated. I was dating a musician in LA. And then I was going to go get my MFA, and then basically a friend, so I was 22, 23 at this point, a friend was saying, "Do you want to go to an acting class with me? I'm kind of nervous about going alone." And I was like, "Sure, why not?" And I kind of fell in love. So I had never acted in high school or college or anything like that. So I felt like a dinosaur when I started out, because so many people who are actors usually kind of know from a very young age, or in high school, they're doing the high school plays and stuff. And if I did do a high school play, you know what, that's not true. I did The Music Man, and I was a boy in it. And I did it so that I could get into a good school. I was like, all right, I'll do this to put on my application. So I did do a play in high school, and I just remember I was one of the male dancers. Yeah.
Okay. So if you sort of, I don't know if you describe that more as falling into it naturally or not, did you then formalize training, or did you just...
Yeah, so the class that I went to with a friend was you know, theater, really. It was, you know, Clifford Odets and Tennessee Williams, and not something that would necessarily translate so well to the screen, because theater acting is so different from TV and film. But I studied for about a year and a half, and then it just was this very serendipitous thing. I met this guy named Marshall Herskovitz, and he created Once and Again, 30-something, My So-Called Life. He and his partner Ed Zwick, they produced Traffic and Shakespeare in Love, so these are big, super Hollywood producers. I met him at jury duty when I was like 24, and he just said he was a writer, and he did not say who he was, you know, or that he was one of the most successful writers in Hollywood. And I was at the time doing this little writer-actor group, and I thought I'd throw him a bone. Meanwhile, I don't even know if I had my SAG card. So I'm like, "Do you want to come to this writer-actor group?" You know, I was thinking maybe he'll learn something, you know?
That's very generous of you.
No, I really had no clue. And he actually showed up, and it wasn't until then that all the writers who were in the group, he showed up, and as soon as he left early, of course, they're like, "Do you know who that is?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's Marshall. I met him at jury duty." And they're like, "No, you idiot. He's one of the biggest screenwriters in Hollywood." And I'm like, oh my gosh. So anyway, I was doing this little tiny play, actually the only play I've done professionally, and it was called Quarter Life. When I was around 25, and it was, of course, Quarter Life Crisis. And I didn't know this either, but Ed and Marshall had tried to do a pilot called Quarter Life for ABC, and it didn't work. And then they wanted to do it for the internet. So he goes to my play, because at this point I know him, I'm sending out the group email, like, anyone come see this play. And he's like, he didn't know if I was a good actor or not. He had no idea. He goes and he says, hey, we're doing this pilot again. We're going to try to reboot it, but we're going to try to do it for the internet. So it's really the first big internet series. And besides Lonely Girl 15, which weirdly enough, I also made a brief appearance on. And he sends me the screenplay and I do it. And then it went to NBC and then it went to Bravo. But it was a good lesson for me because it got canceled quickly. And it was, as an actor, you really have to have super thick skin because you're not going to book 99% of the auditions you get. And when it did get canceled, I kind of had to have the realization, all right, this is not about me. There's other stuff at play. And it was, because the head of NBC was quitting and, it was all these weird, bureaucracy stuff. So that was it. And that kind of launched. That was such a big deal at the time, and there was so much press that sort of launched my career, and that's kind of how I got into it.
Very good, very good.
Yeah.
I, again, can't see the sky if it's getting better or worse, and I don't want to take anything from anyway, so the brief reminder is, for audience questions, be prepared that someone else might want to ask the same question, so you might consider having two in your head. Please try to be concise, direct, and friendly. And Supergirl has the microphone. She'll be going around to the audience, so hands up, who has a question? Whoosh.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm going to ask a question you probably got asked since you started Lois Lane. What was it like for you to step into the iconic role?
Well, I'd never seen, and Tyler hasn't either, actually, to this day. I had seen the original Superman, the Richard Donner with Margot Kidder and Christopher Reeve as a child. And then I get this audition. It was funny because my whole life, people had said, you look kind of like Margot Kidder, Lois Lane from, I've been getting that my entire life. And then this audition, what?
I wasn't going to say that.
Oh no, she's beautiful. And I thought, oh, that's so weird. I've had so many people tell me I kind of look like Margot Kidder. And I decided not to ever watch anyone else's performance because when I went in, I booked it, and it was this audition, and it was a cut scene from, I want to say, Superman 2, and I didn't watch it or anything, and I just thought, it's either going to be what I'm bringing to the room or it's going to be someone else. And when I did it, everyone started clapping. And I think the reason, because they were auditioning a lot of women for the role, I think the reason I got it is that I had a lot of fun with it. And it was a very serious scene on paper, and I was just kind of having fun. And, Lois is kind of sassy and she's bold, and that's kind of how I played it. And then, but the weird thing is, because Tyler and I have such great on-screen chemistry, we had not screen tested together or chemistry read or anything. The first time I met him was the day we first played Superman or Clark Kent and Lois Lane on The Flash in the 2018 Elseworlds crossover. Oh, and I remember when I was 6 months pregnant, and I'm on my way to set, and I was just like, oh, I really hope this guy's not a douchebag. Because I got to work with him, and he was so great, and it's just like we were so dropped in immediately into those characters, and I think we both felt so grateful. As far as playing such an iconic character, it's mainly just cool. I never really found it intimidating. As many of you know, if you follow me on social media, I have a lot of respect for the character. I've always tried to ask the costume designer to, even though I don't love purple, it's Lois's color, so I always say I want to wear purple. What kind of earrings does she wear in the comics? She wears little white, diamond studs or pearl studs, so I almost always only wear studs on the show. Whenever we've had flashback episodes, I'll go through the comics and pull outfits that I'm like, oh, can we do something like this? Can we do something like this? Last season, there was a scene where I had a fedora on, and that was because someone had sent me, because I had asked on social media, like, what are some of the Lois outfits you guys want to see her in? And so, because it was a flashbacks with Lex, we were able to kind of do that, and she's got the fedora on and the journalism stuff. So I've just tried to basically honor what has made her so iconic, because they were both introduced in 1938, and she's remained as iconic as he has, as a symbol of, feminism, but also just, she's ambitious and she's driven, and her work ethic and her pursuit of truth, and those are the kinds of qualities that I've tried to honor in the character. Do you have any fun stories from working with Hugh Laurie on House? Oh, well, it's so funny. Yeah, somebody else just brought up the House episode I did. I was young. I must have been in my late 20s. But it was the only... my friend Peter Blake produced it. He might have even written that episode, but he said it's the only time he's ever broken character. And he goes, try this. So basically on House, it's like the Christmas episode, and the idea is I'm some young fiance, and I've clearly been cheating on my spouse, and I pretend like I have no idea that I'm pregnant, and so then one of my lines was like, well, how did I get pregnant? By sitting on a toilet seat, because I don't want to admit it. And at some point, he's asking me a question like, how dumb is this girl in the scene? And somebody had given me the direction to see if I could get Hugh Laurie to break, and I just stared at him like he asked, like this. Until he started laughing and broke the accent and broke character. So everyone was clapping, like, because that wasn't scripted that way. And I think he was like, what? But he was absolutely lovely to work with. And that was just a really fun episode. Yeah.
It sounds like you have some Lois Lane level intent when you look for a role, which you said with Lois you could look at the comics and stuff for delving in. Were there other roles where you had that ability, or did you have to shape it yourself?
No, well, no. Grimm was just an idea that they'd had. So that was, for an example, a role like that, I get to create it, and I get to put my stamp on it and create. Well, then I got 2 roles on Grimm. I played Juliet and then Eve, and both of them. With Eve, they kind of said, this is sort of what we want. And then I said, oh, well, it reminds me of that film, Nikita. And so I was trying to kind of channel that into it. And it was sort of my idea let's get her really incognito with the wigs and the kind of leather outfits and stuff. But it depends. If I'm playing someone like Lois Lane and, she's appeared in TV and film and animation and all that, then in a situation like that, I would always try to be, and also just as a thank you to the fans, you guys are all here for a reason. I love playing this role, loved. It's over now, but we have 1 season left. It premieres in the fall, but yeah, it depends if I'm playing someone who actually kind of existed, and to me, Lois existed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you also, from your description, sound like you're trying to honor the character, but not copy any of the other actresses that have done it.
No, I pointedly didn't do that, and Tyler didn't either. We just both kind of figured there's a reason we booked these roles, whatever we're bringing, and now that it's over, I probably would be, want to finish some of the Donner films and watch some of the other ones. But while we were shooting, we didn't want to do that.
Hi, Bitsie.
Hi.
What was it like working with Tom Welling in Kent Farm, and what was it like seeing Brandon and Tyler duke it out in Crisis?
I don't think I was there when Brandon and Tyler duked it out in Crisis. Was I? I was. That was, right. That was a crazy scene. That was crazy. But Tom Welling is enormous. Like, he's just huge. And I worked with him briefly. Really nice guy. But I didn't have a ton of stuff with him. He's just bigger than, listen, it's Hollywood. Almost everyone lies about their height on IMDb. If an actor, and if it says they're 6 feet tall, they're not. They're 5'10". And then if it's an actress who's tall, because I have a couple tall actresses friends who are 5'10", and it'll say 5'8". So everyone's trying to be in this like happy medium, but he's a huge dude. And then the crossovers were really fun to shoot, just because, especially in Crisis, because Tyler and I did all 5 of those. you're basically just with all the leads from all the series. So it was, Grant and Melissa and Ruby and Brandon and I had that scene. And I was just saying to Brandon, I'm like, we should offer photos together too, because was it Crisis or Ellsworth? It must have been Crisis where we have the scene together. And it's Lois and Brandon, and he's got the kind of black in the seal. And but he was really sweet, and I think he looks an awful lot like Christopher Reeve, to be honest. Yeah, it was chaos, because what they would do is, like, every character, if you had a scene with 7 of the leads on the shows, it's like everybody has to have at least one line. But they were fun. And then, what happened with us is that we started during COVID, and so I think both that and then kind of our creator Todd Helbing sort of wanted us to be a little separate from the other universes, and so we ended up, Superman and Lois never did a crossover with any of the other shows. I think it was briefly talked about doing it with Batwoman, and then with COVID, it was just, things were so locked down. We weren't even supposed to hang out with each other. We would do little pods. Like, Tyler and I hung out a lot because we were obviously shooting together a lot, but there was an episode where I was shooting a lot with Lola Parks, who plays John Henry Irons. Then, that week or two, I'd say, well, you and I are acting together, so we can hang out this week. But shooting during COVID was difficult, for a lot of reasons. Hi.
First of all, thank you for coming here. I know everybody here appreciates it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And wrote this down so I don't screw it up. Now that Superman and Lois has ended, what have you learned most about yourself from the whole experience?
I would say just the level of professionalism and leadership you have to bring when you are a title character on a show is really important. Because I've heard of a lot of TV shows where, number 1, number 2 on the cast sheet are difficult, and then it really trickles down, and it makes it a tough experience for everyone on the show and the crew. And Tyler and I got lucky because he and I both worked the same way, which is, I don't know how much you guys know about TV, but we have stand-ins while they're lighting a scene, and they're called second team, and then the actors are called first team. And a lot of the time once the scene is lit, they say, okay, we're ready for first team. And you will see a lot of actors just like tweeting or on Instagram or whatever, and they'll just kind of mosey over to set whenever they want. And Tyler and I were so fast getting to our marks that we were too fast, and they'd still be lighting. And they're like, well, wait, get out of here. And we're like, well, you guys call first team. And they're like, we didn't expect you guys to just come right away. So we finally said, listen, we're not those kinds of actors. When you call first team, have the set be ready, because my job too, especially as a mom, especially as a lead character on a show, works so much, was to get everyone out of there on time, if not early, so they could see their families and loved ones. Because I'd go days without seeing my daughter. I'm not complaining. I'm, obviously grateful for the role, but I'd get home and she'd be asleep, and then she'd be gone and at school by the time I woke up. So I really felt like I was always trying to keep things moving. And so that was probably the biggest thing I learned, because on Grimm, and I also learned a lot from David Gentoli, who was the lead on Grimm, who's my husband, because he really had that level of professionalism on Grimm, and he's always, first of all, I'm not early to work, but I'm never late. He goes to work early. And I'm like, why? I don't get it. But he just wants to make sure that he's exactly where he needs to be when they need him. And to this day, because he did a TV show called A Million Little Things, and he'd always make sure he was 15 minutes early if they needed him to shave that day or whatever. And so I would say that's professionally anyway, that was one of the big takeaways.
I'd like to say that you did a wonderful job, you and Tyler, of a sick wife and a husband trying to deal with it.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, I appreciate that. I was at a Comic-Con in Wales when the Brent Fletcher and Todd Helbing, the showrunners, called and pitched me the cancer storyline, and I was scared at first because I thought, this is a superhero show, and that's pretty serious. And it wasn't just serious, but the kind of breast cancer they talked about giving me, which is called inflammatory breast cancer, is like the most aggressive kind because it's undetectable before stage 3, which is when it's metastasized. And so it's really aggressive and really deadly. And, you know, I said, okay, I gotta think about it. And then I said, I called him back and I said, listen, I know it's a CW show and there's a lot of pretty people on the CW, but I go, I want to shave my head. If we're doing this, I want to shave my head. I want to go for it. I do not want to do this pretty blah, blah, blah. And they said, they're never going to let you do that. And I said, all right, well, I want to really depict weakening that would happen and everything. And so with the hair anyway, what we decided to do was throw in a ton of extensions at the beginning of season 3. And as Lois started chemo, start pulling the extensions out. And then, you know, like barely washing my hair and a lot of the hats. And I don't think it was explained well enough in my opinion, but she wears a cold cap. So the reason Lois didn't lose all of her hair is that it's a sort of newer technology, but you can do a cold cap on your head to minimize hair loss if you're doing chemotherapy. So you'll see that in some of the scenes. But I talked to many breast cancer survivors. I probably did talk to too many, because then I was calling the showrunners every other day being like, well, it's not really like that, according to, you know, Tiffany from Washington, who I talked to. But that was really crucial, and I learned so much about it. But just, you know, speaking of Tiffany from Washington, she was diagnosed when she was 30. She had 3 kids. She was breastfeeding her 5-month-old. And she basically just squeezed her boob to see if it was going to be a big milk day for her baby, and she felt a bump. And she had breast cancer, and she would be driving from, I think, Bellingham to Seattle and back, and she, at some point, was so weak, she was crawling up the stairs to put her kids to bed. And that's kind of what I wanted to do, and they were like, yeah, but you're still Lois Lane, and so we kind of had to find a happy medium where you could tell that Lois was weakened and couldn't do as much as normally, but also where she's got that fighting spirit. And but yeah, I appreciate that.
With that level of commitment to research, yeah, bring it. That level of commitment to research and reaching out, did you then receive responses from people who are going through this?
I mean, even today, just in the first autograph signing session, it's amazing how worried we all kind of were about doing the storyline, and then how much it really touched people. You know, probably everyone in this room either has been affected by it themselves, knows somebody does, has a friend of a friend who has. My grandfather died of cancer. And it is so prevalent, and one of the things that I was just telling someone in the line is that they're discovering that women are getting diagnosed with breast cancer younger and younger, and it used to always be that you get a mammogram when you're 40, and now I think they're going to start advising starting to get mammograms at 35. Because of say I spoke to 11 women, breast cancer survivors, 3 of them were diagnosed under 30 with breast cancer, and just happened to kind of, you know, find a lump. And that's a lot. That's a quarter of the women I spoke to, and that's pretty young. And so I'm glad that they're going to change the advisory on that.
And thank you so much for coming. And my question is, I was a huge Lois and Clark fan. I waited like 25 years for them to bring out a new season of Superman. And you did a phenomenal job as Lois and Clark. Do you think that by doing this role, like a lot of the comic actors, they kind of engulf that kind of person, and they kind of keep that person within them, like, you know, for the rest of their lives, they come to things in the future. Do you think by playing Lois that you kind of engulf that character in yourself and will continue to kind of carry her with you, you know, lifetime, throughout your life?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I'm sure, you know, some of the determination, absolutely. But I also was a little bit like that, you know, before this, as just far as being a pretty determined and, you know, assertive person. But I think you always, you know, I'll always be, you know, I'm also always going to be bummed that I didn't get to play her for longer, because I had so much fun playing this character, and it is such an iconic role. But I would say, you know, the determination that she had, and I'll carry forward with me for sure. And also just the kind of mom she was. You know, I've always been, like I said, I was pregnant with my daughter when I first started playing this role on Elseworlds. I was, you know, 5.5 or 6 months pregnant, and so she only ever seen me as a working mom, and you know, that can be really tough. And it's been actually, I started shooting a movie right after Superman and Lois wrapped, but it's kind of nice being a stay-at-home mom with her right now, because I feel like I haven't seen, you know, I missed so much of her childhood growing up, because of COVID too. She couldn't visit me at work for a year, for the first 3 seasons. So it really wasn't until season 4 that she was ever even allowed on set, because they were so paranoid about it. So I, you know, it was a sacrifice. And I know Lois Lane's made a lot of sacrifices, and you see that on the show, like them, you know, leaving and, you know, tracking down some story or, you know, some arch enemy, and the boys are feeling a little bit abandoned and trying to find that fine balance between, you know, working and also being a parent.
I asked Tyler last year, this is sort of a play off of that, if he ever had trouble letting go of a role, and I believe his answer was akin to an acting coach teacher that told him to imagine a 1-inch board. Once you step off the board, the role is gone. You're back. You can drive home yourself. Did you ever have separation anxiety or anything?
Well, you know, weirdly enough, I was thinking, everybody's like, oh, how are you feeling? You know, as we were wrapping up the show, and I'm not kidding, we wrapped like, I think, April 24th, and I started a movie April 29th with Rob Riggle. And so I was just saying, I cannot think about, I gotta do the absolute best I can in the series finale. And then the second I wrap that, I need to start working on this film. I'm starting in a couple days. And so, you know, it's gonna hit me eventually. It just hasn't hit me because I just wrapped that movie about a 1.5 weeks ago. So at some point it's gonna hit me. But, you know, we are actors, and the reality is when the job is done, you do another job as pretending to be someone else.
Maybe some happy sad or something like that.
Hi. So speaking of the final season, is there any kind of hints you can give about what's coming up?
I'm the worst at this too. I've had to learn the hard way. Like if Tyler were here, he'd take the mic away from me right now. Okay. So everybody was sad that so much of the cast got not cut. Yeah. Everybody's in the final season, but to a lesser extent. And I think the way they wrote it actually is lovely. And at least one of the series regulars that was dropped is in every single of the 10 episodes. So it doesn't feel like, oh, all of a sudden it's just the 4 Kent family. Everyone makes appearances. They did a really beautiful job. It is, you guys are not going to believe the first episode. It's bananas. It's emotional, but what they did was it's based on one of the comics. It's very bold. It was a very bold decision on their part to do this and to pull it off for the first episode of season 4. And then there's a couple like David Giuntoli actually directed episode 3, season 4, and that was for Lois anyway, an emotional one. But you know, Todd and Bren, I think, are kind of softies, and it's very much still a superhero show, but we were given the gift of knowing, hey, this is it. And so they wanted to wrap it up, and at the end of the day, the show really is about family, and that's what people respond to more than the superhero stuff. And so that's kind of how there is probably a slightly greater emphasis on that than just big action sequences, which of course we have those too. But I'm trying to think if I can, what I can say. Some characters come back. The guy who plays Lex Luthor, Michael Cudlitz, has a huge presence, obviously, in season 4, and he is so good at Lex. And there's, you know, there's adherence to comics that some Easter eggs and all that. But yeah, you'll see Lex a lot. The only kind of thing I can say is that someone reappears that you're not expecting to reappear at some point.
Thank you for your role. It was amazing. I think it's the veteran of the show is the best. But my question is something like that: is how do you feel, or you and the cast, when all those changes in DC and Warner, when James Gunn take the leadership? How do you feel to say, oh my God, they were going to cancel the show, but in the end, he say that no, the show is so amazing that they deserve to finish because it was so amazing. How do you feel when you say, oh, actually we're a really good show and we have the opportunity to close this show so good? We have the opportunity to finish it. How do you feel that?
Well, first of all, I want to say, because I know this is a contentious question that comes up just because we did sort of end early. I've met James Gunn. I adore him. I think he's really smart. I think he's a wonderful visionary, and I'm looking forward to seeing his Superman movie. And I'm looking forward to seeing Rachel Brosnahan, who's going to be the next Lois Lane, because the reality is, like, we're all part of another one, and there's going to be another Lois after her. And I've always paid a lot of respect to all of the Loises before me, and will continue to. There was some fear when they, but it wasn't just DC Comics. Warner Brothers kind of had an upheaval, and so had the CW going to Nexstar and stuff. So it's funny because Tyler was here last year, and a lot of people were saying he was so nervous because last year this time he didn't know if we were getting renewed or not, and we couldn't believe that we didn't know that late. I know my husband and I were still in Vancouver just because our daughter was in preschool, and I'm like, I can't believe they're telling us this late. Are we getting renewed or not? And it started to feel like that might be it, which was a bummer because you all saw the end of season 3 with the Doomsday, and then it just goes to black. And I was just thinking, my God, if that's the end of this series, that's so annoying. More annoying than the Sopranos ending or the Lost ending. It's just this, and then we go to black. And then I got a call from one of the producers at Berlanti, and she said, listen, everybody loves the show. It's going to be smaller season. It's only 10 episodes, but we want to make sure you guys can go out. And like I said, I do really adore James Gunn. I also sort of know Peter Safran, and I think they have a vision for DC, and I trust them. And I spoke to Jim Lee recently, who's like one of the nicest guys ever. About just, wanting to, I'm like, what else is there? I loved doing stuff for DC Comics, and it was exciting being able to finish the show.
When Tyler was here,
he looked like Santa Claus by the time. Did you guys see photos of him last year? His beard was white.
Oh yeah. He said it was, giving his sports background, he said that was his rally beard because they hadn't been picked up yet, and I think it was just a matter of days afterwards.
Yeah, no, they made him shave it off. He tried to talk the showrunners into it, and they're like, dude, it's a direct pickup of the end of season 3. No, you cannot have your Santa Claus beard.
One line. I have had a day.
Yeah.
What is your favorite thing to do with your family?
Oh, that's a good question. What's my favorite thing to do with my family? Well, go swimming. We love to swim. Our daughter swims like a little fish. We got her into swim classes when she was 6 weeks old. We like going swimming. We like going for walks. David loves to take her for little daddy-daughter dates. And they'll go for a bike ride around the neighborhood and then go get ice cream. And, go to museums. Our daughter's really into museums and artwork. And she's really into the movie Brave right now. with Merida, with the glorious, and I'm Scottish, so I'm like, let's watch Brave again. So we just got her a little kids archery set, and she's horrible right now. I'm like, you'll get better. But so we do that in the yard too. We'll play with her little archery set and yeah, bike riding and all that.
Thank you.
Hi. I just want to say you are my very favorite Lois ever.
Thank you.
And one of the things I really love about it is that you're very real, and you talked about that, some about dealing with illness and all that. But one of the things I wanted to address was, how was it trying to be the first Lois who had teenage kids? Who were your influences in helping you with that?
Well, it's funny. When I had a baby, so it's not like I had a lot of. I have no experience being a mom of a teenager. I just remember being a teenager and what a pain I was. And also, the actors, Jordan Elsass and Alex Garfin. Jordan did the first 2 seasons of the show. They were teenagers, and so they could be teenagers, and so sometimes they made it really easy for me and Tyler to, kind of be annoyed with them and snap at them, because they'd be like, and Alex is kind of like this, God is really bright, but his head's in the clouds, and you're like, Alex, we're rolling. I don't know why we've never done a blooper reel. But there's a scene that Alex went to the editing suite this season from season 4 that I'm doing with Tyler, and I don't think this is that much of a spoiler, but basically, Alex plays Jordan, and Jonathan's gotten himself into trouble, and Alex skips into the scene and goes, Papa, your other son has gotten himself into a bit of a quandary. And so part of why he was confused is that I was in my warming coat because it was really cold, but I was off camera. And you can wear your warming coat if it's clean of me, and I'm talking to Tyler, it was Tyler's close up, but Alex came into frame, and all you see is Tyler go, we're rolling. And then you see Alex's face just turn with fear, and he goes, but Bitsie has her warming coat on. And we both, Tyler and I at the same time go, yes, because I'm off camera. I think it was a huge blessing being able to play Lois as a mom, because the amount of depth and vulnerability you get to play when there are children involved is way different. When your kids' lives are at stake, it's just different. And so I felt really grateful because I felt like I got to play a more vulnerable, and also on the contrary side, a stronger Lois, who was like, nothing is going to happen to my children, no matter how big of a pain in the butt they're being,
We go until 1 p.m., right? We have about 15 minutes. Is that right?
Yes.
All right, please proceed.
What was your favorite project that you've done?
My favorite project I've done?
Yeah.
For TV, I would say this one, Superman and Lois, just because I love this character so much. I loved filming in Vancouver. It's a great city to raise kids in. And then for movies, probably being a part of The Artist, which was that Academy Award-winning black and white silent film. And I had a smaller role in it, but it was a really neat film to do, and he had a gramophone on set and would be playing music loudly because nobody ever had to be mic'd. It was a silent film, and that was a really fun experience. And what was the wardrobe I was wearing in that movie was so old, it was like falling apart. The costume designer, who I believe also won an Academy Award, I mean, it was just won so many Academy Awards. We were in really old, they pulled all these old costumes from MGM that were, falling apart and everything. But that was probably my favorite movie I've done. I just did a movie with Rob Riggle that's going to get wide release. They called it a drama. To me, it's a little bit more of a dramedy. But I don't know when it's getting released, but that was really fun. And Rob Riggle is a wonderful guy. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of The Big Slick. I was in Kansas City, Missouri last weekend It's a charity for the Children's Mercy Hospital in Kansas City, and Paul Rudd and Rob Riggle and Jason Sudeikis and now Heidi Gardner and Eric Stonestreet have now raised over the last 15 years $25 million for the Children's Hospital. Yeah, so that movie was fun too, but it was an indie, so it was really wild going, because Superman and Lois was such a huge show with a big, giant crew. So it was a little weird going from just an enormous crew to like, you know, probably 40, 50 people on the crew. But independents are very fun too, because you're bonding and it's kind of like, all right, no one's making money on this, so we're all in it together. Do you need to carry a, you know, thing of water? Sure, let's go. Yeah, it's a good question.
I wanted to say just how much I really enjoyed the way that Superman and Lois was a whole different take on Superman. It was a take that you always wondered about, because what would ever happen if Superman and Lois ever had kids? That's been explained or been talked about in the other iterations, and in the one with Dean Cain, I mean, they decided he couldn't have kids. So the fact that this one did, I think it was really awesome. But I also, the main thing I wanted to say that, but the question I really wanted to have, everybody that's pretty much been in every one of these other iterations of Superman has been in something else. Are you open to doing something else for Superman?
Oh yeah, of course. I would love to, and I had a great time at being a part of DC Comics. That's why I called Jim and I was like, hey, what else can we do? First of all, thank you for your service. What Army, Navy, what? Air Force. So thank you for your service. Speaking of the Air Force, so not everyone knows this. My legal name's Elizabeth, which was my grandma, Betty's legal name. My nickname's Bitsie, but my grandfather, Walter Scott Tulloch, was a bomber pilot in World War II, the Korean War, the Cold War, and Vietnam. And his childhood nickname was Bitsie, and he kept it as his call sign, you know, like Maverick or Goose. And when I was born, people just started calling me Bitsie too, so we were both Bitsie, but he was in the Air Force his entire career. Yeah, I think just having the, like I said before, having the element of family. When Tyler and I were first pitched the show, we both were kind of saying, well, is it going to be like all the other ones, or is it going to be different? And they said, no, we want it to be sort of like Friday Night Lights and like This Is Us with an element of the superhero, but really this is a family show, and think of it that way. And I think that's what they accomplished.
Yeah, probably a wise choice to have the boys a little older. I mean, it would have been you and Tyler doing all the heavy lifting.
Because, like, I mean, I get it. Teenagers can do younger kids. There would have, like, you know, one of the Lang kids, she's darling, but she sort of disappears a lot from the episodes because there's just not as much for younger kids to do on screen. And, you know, having two young teenagers who just are making all kinds of wrong decisions and having one of them with powers and one without, I thought was a great idea. So I think it had to be teenagers for us to be able to pull that off.
Well explored, yes. Question?
Yes. I have a quick question for you. Superman and Lois are such iconic characters, and back in the day, actors were worried about getting typecast. Now, obviously, that doesn't seem to happen anymore. And I'm just curious why you think that is. Like, how were you able to book a movie immediately after this was over? And back in the day, George Reeves and Noel Neal, to a certain extent, they were kind of trapped.
I don't know. That might happen to me because in TV, who knows? I hope it doesn't. I certainly hope it doesn't. But it is always a little scary when you've played, especially a title lead, and then everyone's like, oh, but they're that. You know, but and honestly, I remember David being concerned after Grimm, and then he got a show right away, and he was doing a million little things. And I think if you're a good actor, you're going to keep working. But it's something that I've thought about before. I'm like, I wonder if people are just going to be like, no, because she was Lois Lane, and it's going to be hard to see her as anything else. So we'll see. But the movie was an offer, and it was one of the producers has been trying to work with me for a long time, and I think he just, for him, it was a boon, because he's like, well, hopefully her Superman and Lois and Grimm fans will go to the theaters and watch her in the movie. So hopefully that's how people kind of look at it instead.
I think you're a wonderful actress. I've watched you for many years. I watched you on Grimm. I watched every episode 20 times.
Oh my gosh.
We have a ghost incident. Can we hold just 1 second?
Okay.
Okay, go.
Sorry, is there a ghost?
Yeah.
The Ghostbusters.
Because I am French.
You've watched every episode of Grimm 20 times? There's 123 episodes of Grimm.
20 times. And I like your character. You're very versatile. That's why you're not getting typecast.
Thank you.
The one that you developed into like Storm with the white wig.
Oh, Eve?
Yeah, Eve. That was excellent. And I just want to say I'm glad to meet you and see you. I hope I get your autograph.
Yeah.
I've got a big following on my Facebook page. I am a writer. But I love you, and you will never get typecast because you can go from one character.
Thank you
to the
so
other.
much.
God
Yeah.
bless you.
7 minutes-ish. And there comes nature.
Oh, is it raining?
Yeah, a little bit. It sounds like it.
Sun's out a little bit.
The sky's applauding the top of the tent. Got
Maybe
it?
that's why the Ghostbusters came. Let people into the car.
Hey, Elizabeth. So, and I apologize if you may have covered a little bit of the question I got here. I've gotten caught up a little bit. But first of all, I just want to say that with regarding the cancer storyline last season, very well done. Thank you for that. But, for me personally, earlier this year, my dad actually passed away of melanoma. And so getting to see that season play out like it did last year, even though it's different circumstances, it helped. A lot of things in my life, we're able to be there for kind of framework to process everything that's going on. But part of it was being able to reflect back on that season and just see different characters reacting to it. So, thank you.
Well, I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you. And so part of the question off of that was, with season 4 coming up, do you get to refer back to that storyline?
To the cancer storyline?
Yeah.
I don't think this is a spoiler, but
okay.
Yes, she's recovering. But yes, you will see some of the cancer stuff in season 4. Much less of an emphasis because I felt like season 3 was really about that,
right.
And season 4 isn't. But there are still, you'll still see it talked about and addressed. But it's really more at this point that Lois is recovering more. Yeah, you're welcome.
One of those, a sense of closure to a plot kind of thing, or just addressed as something.
Yeah, well, I didn't want it. And I said this to them. It's funny when my husband. I don't know if anyone's seen A Million Little Things. His character ends up in a wheelchair, and they were gonna originally have him walk again, and David was like, no, because that's not really real life. He got the way he ended up paralyzed. He's like, most people would stay, and so I remember him saying, if we're gonna do this storyline, which I'm down to do, but this is not gonna be some miraculous, some episode where he just gets up and starts walking, and he was really insistent about it, and I respected that a lot. And I remember saying in season 4, I'm like, we can't just ignore this because we did not wrap this up in season 3. So even if there's less of an emphasis on it, I'm like, we still have to address it sometimes because this is real life and it doesn't just disappear magically. And so and I wanted to make sure we were as honest as we could be about that storyline.
It sounds like the kind of thing that doesn't matter just now. People that discover the show later will appreciate that you didn't just leave it hanging.
I hope so, yeah.
Other questions?
That's you.
Super sneeze.
Thank you. We probably have time for one more.
I know we've talked about the cancer story, but what was it like doing the cult story in season 2 with Lucy being in a cult?
I wish I had more time actually to kind of flesh that one out with Jenna Dewan. That was Raya was fantastic. She was the cult leader. That was it was a fun season just because I had so much fun working with Jenna. She's just like literal sunshine. Always dancing on set. She's a dancer. But that was That was a fun one too. Again, you know, it's family, and you know, I got to work more with Dylan Walsh because Jenna Dewan was playing Lucy Lane, my younger, not Lane, Lane, my younger sister, and I love working with Dylan Walsh. He's such a talent. So that was a kind of fun one. And then season 3, for me anyway, was a lot heavier because I really had to sort of stay in the cancer stuff, like we've addressed a bunch.
Going back to the crossover, in my opinion, the crossover was the best that was ever done. I enjoyed it. I watched it twice. My question is, why didn't John Cryer reprise his role as Lex Luthor?
I think because, and I never know how to answer this correctly, but we were not a part of their universe. I think was what sort of was decided. We were kind of on a different Earth, I guess, something like that. Then I got confused because I'm forgetting the actor's name. David Ramsey had a brief appearance in one of the episodes, and he was playing the character from the other one. But you know, our show just was sort of different tonally. Also, we shot differently. We shot wide format, and I think also because we started during COVID, at some point the decision was made. They're kind of doing their own thing, and so John Cryer I adore. I think he's so smart, he's so fun to work with. But when you see Michael Cudlitz do Lex Luthor, it is terrifying, and he is so talented. You know, he was nominated for, I think he was on Southland, he was nominated for a Critics' Choice Award, he was on The Walking Dead, he directed one of the episodes of season. He is so good in this role. And I would have loved working with John Cryer too, but I feel like David Rappaport and Lindsay Baldessari, who are casting directors, really hit it out of the ballpark with our cast.
Last question.
Hi, is the last question?
Yeah, better be good.
No pressure. Or
Hi, I'm Carlos. I'm from Spain.
Yes.
I don't speak English. Nothing. No
well,
question.
You are right now, but yeah.
No question. For me, you are the best, Lois Lane. Thank you.
So, Carlos, yo nací cuando mi familia y yo vivíamos en Barcelona y después mudamos a Uruguay y Argentina por 8 años.
I love that when we have an interview, especially if it's a Superman actor, I just sit back and the actor gives just the most amazing Superman-inspired personal advice kind of ending. That just topped all of it.
Yeah.